The Assembly is now in session. Assemblymember Gordon notices the absence of a quorum. The Sergeant-at-Arms will prepare the chamber and bring in the absent members. The clerk will call the roll.
Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Baker, Bigelow, Bloom, Bonilla, Bonta, Bro, Brown, Burke, Calderon, Campos, Chang, Chow, Chavez, David Chu, Canson Chu, Cooley, Cooper, DeBobne, Daly, Daly, Dodd, Eggman, Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Cristina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Jones Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurman, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
Members, can I ask you to report to the floor, and can I ask the members that are here to please turn their keys on? Members, the quorum is present. If I could ask you to take your seats. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of chamber and the gallery to please stand for the prayer. Today's prayer will be offered by Assembly Member Jim Cooper.
Please bow your head. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing together this body of talented community servants for one purpose, to uplift our community and to serve as leaders of change. We look to you, Lord, to help us combat poverty, to eliminate the injustices of the world, and to challenge racism and hate. We look to you, Lord, to guide us as we take this month to learn about the struggles of our people have faced and how we have faced adversity. And in your word, fourth chapter of Philippians, verse 13, you stated, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. We find strength in you, Lord, when our faith is tested, and thank you for your eternal love. We ask that you continue to bless the work that we are doing and guide us in our future endeavors. Thank you for traveling grace and allowing all those that have traveled distances to celebrate the contributions of African Americans in our great nation. All these things we pray in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing as we do the flag salute. I would ask Assemblymember Brown to lead us in our pledge today.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, February 4, 2016. The Assembly met at 9 a.m.
Mr. Holden moves. Mr. Mays seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees, there are none. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Under motions and resolutions, absences. The absences for the day for legislative business, Mr. Calderon, Ms. Grove. For personal business, Mr. Dowley. For illness, Ms. Gaines, Mr. Hernandez, and Ms. Waldron. Mr. Holden, you're recognized for your motions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask for unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 and allow Assembly Member Jones Sawyer to have guests and photographers on the floor today. Mr. Jones Sawyer's guests will be in the area of the members' desk for the observance of Black History Month.
Without objection, the request is granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, we will now move to the Assembly observance of Black History Month. Moving to file item 7, ACR 118, McCarty for purpose of third reading. The clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 118 by Assemblymember McCarty and others relative to Black History Month.
Mr. McCarty, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In honor of Black History Month, I'm proud to present ACR 118. Created by Carter G. Woodson more than a half century ago, Americans have been coming together each February to reflect on the rich history of our African American communities, as well as remembering the long road towards equality, freedom, and justice. As we celebrate Black History Month, we strengthen an important American tradition. This month is an inclusive celebration that offers all Americans the opportunity to gain greater understanding of the contributions of African Americans to our nation. Despite the great progress we've seen, it wasn't so long ago that African Americans were prevented from owning property, attaining home and business loans, joining unions, and forced to attend segregated second-class schools. Each year, American school children are taught about the great African American leaders who fought against racism and oppression, Rosa Parks, Dr. King, George Washington Carver, and others. But we also know about the countless other stories of everyday African Americans doing extraordinary things to improve the lives of others in our nation. This year's theme, Unsung Heroes of the Civil Rights Movement, calls upon us to celebrate those who have worked tirelessly to fight against the racial divisions and disparities that continue to persist. Please join me in support of this resolution and of Black History Month.
Thank you, Mr. Jones Sawyer. You're recognized.
Thank you. On behalf of the California Legislative Black Caucus, Chairman and members, I would like to express our thanks for our participants today, but more importantly, on this ACR 118. It's been last night when we heard from these individual unsung heroes. Many of us know about the people that you can read about in history. We have a rich history here in California. And as we learned last night, from people being as young as in their 30s to individuals as old as 93 or 94 years old who will be here today that we will honor, that there are African Americans in every field of human endeavor who have done some amazing things, even though many of them and some of them came up through segregation. And even though there was segregated schools, things that got in their way, people who said they couldn't do it, people who said they weren't smart enough, people who said that because of their skin, they could not achieve the heights to which they have, they overcame. And it is definitely a pleasure to let everybody know about these amazing people that we're going to highlight today, because I was awestruck last night at our dinner last night and what they've done, and it'll be a pleasure for you to hear about them today, because that truly is what African American History Month is all about. It's not the people that you read about, but it's the people that you don't read about, that you don't hear about. And so with that, I would ask and I vote for ACR 118 McCarty.
Thank you, Mr. Jones Sawyer. Mr. Holden, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise also in support of ACR 118. The Black History Month is an annual celebration of people and events that underscore the profound impact that generations of African Americans have made on American history. A history rooted in perseverance, courage, and faith by a people who changed culture, attitudes, and more importantly, unjust laws. As a member of the CLCB, California Legislative Black Caucus, I stand before you as a proud heir of the legacy of the African Americans who have served in the hollow halls of the state capitol. Pioneers who went from activist to legislator. They brought an inner city perspective to the floor of the legislature that inspired hope, home to a racially marginalized, economically disenfranchised, and socially demoralized community. Those heroes and sheroes who we stand on the shoulders of today, those titans of the civil rights movement, who passed such laws as California's early civil rights legislation, Rumford Fair Housing Act, health care for sickle cell anemia sufferers, legislation establishing UCLA, and many other laws that benefited all Californians. I want to take a brief moment to reflect on our civil rights pioneers and the countless men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice to help change our state and nation for the better. We salute Nate Holden, Yvonne Brathwaite Burt, Mark Ridley Thomas, Speakers Willie Brown Jr., Karen Bass and Herb Wesson, Mervyn Dimely, Augustus Hawkins, and Byron Rumford. And the first African American elected to the California State Legislature, Frederick H. Roberts, who was elected in 1918 and served until 1934, along with many other distinguished members who helped define the potential greatness of California. In honor of these former members, Madam Speaker, I ask that we adopt ACR 118.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Mr. Gibson, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support of ACR 118. As a member of the Legislative Black Caucus, want to say how proud I am of those honorees that we shared an evening with last night and those who you will see on the floor joining us momentarily. So as we reflect on our history, it is an honor to be here to stand on the shoulders of those who have gone and paved the way for many of us to, one, grace this place and also advocate on behalf of the communities in which we serve. It's an honor to stand on the shoulders of those who died and bled and sweat and cried and moaned for us to be in a place where we can stand up and allow our voices to be heard. Individuals, sometimes they go unrecognized. Individuals in my community like Dr. Sweet Alice Harris, who fight daily for unwed mothers and to put food on tables and protect those who are most vulnerable, who are involved in gangs and things of that nature. Dr. Perry Crouch, who bring truths to the Crips and the Bloods in my community, who work tirelessly. Those are the unspoken heroes. Tim Watkins, who walked in the shoes of his father in 1965, who will be on this floor today, who brought a community together during the Watts Revolt and said that we are better than that. We can change the trajectory of our community. Those unsung heroes that I'm happy to stand on shoulders today. Permission to read a quote, Madam Speaker.
Without objection.
Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed. Booker T. Washington. Members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote on ACR 118.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. You're recognized.
Madam Speaker, members, on behalf of the API Legislative Caucus, I rise in support of ACR 118. I want to thank my colleague from Sacramento for introducing it and for the service of the chair of the Black Caucus for bringing us these issues time and time again. There's so much to highlight that we could in Black history, but I especially want to mention the contribution of African American veterans from the War of Independence to Vietnam. There were so many that served, that took upon themselves the risks and responsibilities of citizenship even before their nation had recognized them as fully fledged citizens of the United States. That to me is an inspirational tale. The other is that of the civil rights movement. In the 1960s, a collective of thousands of blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, APIs, and whites fought vigorously for a relevant education, an education that includes the voice and history of people of color. This struggle continued into the 1970s, leading to the creation of ethnic studies in our universities. And I think today it's important to mention that knowledge of history is one of our great weaknesses as Americans, that we do not know our own history well enough, and that these students knew that we cannot progress until we learn from the lessons of our past. Black History Month is an opportunity to highlight inspiring stories of African American leaders and reflect on the struggles and accomplishments of African Americans that are the bedrock of America's legacy. The fight for social justice and equality is far from over, and we shall look to these leaders and to the masses of people that followed them as we move forward with policies that will continue to serve our communities. It's with this shared call to unity that I urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Levine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise on behalf of the Jewish Caucus in support of ACR 118, designating February as Black History Month. We reflect upon and remember history for two reasons: to celebrate our triumphs and to remember our struggles. In Black History Month, we celebrate great African Americans past and honor their lives, work, and contributions. We also recognize that African Americans continue to be role models for the next generation of American trailblazers. Black History Month is also about recounting the lessons of our nation's past and continuing the struggle and fight for equality. I am proud that Jewish Americans have always stood arm in arm with African Americans and fought for what is right: civil rights for all Americans. Jewish Americans and African Americans are committed to equality, equality in our lives, not just in our laws. Both communities share a commitment to fight for and protect human and civil rights. Together, we become a force. And it is important that all of us recognize African American heritage. The richness of Black History Month is truly American history. We all share in this celebration, and I thank my colleague for authoring this important resolution.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia, you're recognized.
Good morning, members, Madam Speaker, and guests. As the Vice Chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, I rise in support of ACR 118 and bring special attention to the contributions of African American women. Women like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth spoke out openly against inhumanities of slavery and suffering for Black women. They laid the foundation for later movements in the next century, continuing the fight for women and Blacks to receive equal rights through the civil rights movement. Tubman and Truth laid the path for strong women like Rosa Parks, Marley Evers, and Anna Arnold Hedgeman. During slavery, women like Phyllis Wheatley used the written word to educate others. Today, we are grateful for the works of Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Zora Neale Hurston, and Alice Walker. On this stage, a woman like Pearl Bailey opened our eyes. Her stage presence and ambassadorship opened the world for women like Lena Horne and later women like Oprah Winfrey. Tennis player Althea Gibson opened the court for young girls like Venus and Serena Wilson. Runners like Wilma Rudolph outpaced others to clear the field for Jackie Joyner-Kersee. Laws were made for all Americans for almost 200 years before politicians like Shirley Chisholm and Barbara Jordan were elected. They were the path pavers for the incredible women we serve with today: Senator Holly Mitchell and Assembly members Cheryl Brown, Autumn Burke, and Shirley Weber. As we gather today to celebrate the amazing accomplishments of all African Americans, especially African American women, we need to continue to fight the same battle our foremothers fought. Women, especially African American women, are still marginalized in pay equity, representation in elected offices, and high-level positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Cooley, you are recognized.
Colleagues, I am very pleased to rise today in support of ACR 118. 3 years ago this day, this measure was being carried by our colleague, the Senator from Los Angeles, Holly Mitchell. And on that day, it was the second day in which Anna had come into my family's life. Anna is my granddaughter. She was entered in the care of my son and his daughter, or his wife, on the day before this day. It was February 11th in 2013, and it was Anna's birthday. And Senator Mitchell, my colleague sitting right here, wrote a note to Anna on this resolution, which is now hangs in her room. So I'm inclined to think about this month in terms of what it means for our children, for the potential of their lives. I often reflect when I talk to kids in elementary schools around my district that, you know, your life is a package that you're going to unwrap as you go through life. You don't actually know at any given moment who you are. You are going to unwrap that package as you go through life, as you face circumstances, as you face challenge. And you reach inside yourself, and lo and behold, there's something there to meet the demand of the moment that you did not know till you got thrust into that situation. And I think this illustrates the importance of Black History Month, to celebrate the variety of accomplishments that have come from this community as from every community. It has been said that one nurtures their mind with great thoughts. You think about that. You nurture your mind with great thoughts. And to believe in the heroic, to believe in the outstanding, to believe in the remarkable allows you to grow towards being heroic, outstanding, remarkable. And the importance of this month is not just that it causes one to reflect upon outstanding, heroic accomplishments, but there's also that element of identity, that I'm reflecting upon these outstanding, heroic things, and yet I feel a personal identity with the person who achieved it. And to conclude, I just want to note, I actually don't know this, but I sit back here and I look at Abraham Lincoln up there, and I often posit that that document in his hand is the Emancipation Proclamation. Standing there, Capitol in the distance, a document that changed the course of American history, a war which until that time was about this abstract notion of keeping the Union together, became a conflict about setting people free. He forever changed the meaning of America, and that lies at the heart of this sort of recognition today, that we do want to celebrate the great accomplishments so that every American can nurture their mind on outstanding thoughts, not just as an abstract, great thing to consider, but with a sense of identity, just as I hope my granddaughter Anna will as she grows up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooley. Mr. Alejo, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As chairman of the California Latino Legislative Caucus, I'm very proud every year to stand with my brothers and sisters of the Black Legislative Caucus, because today is an opportunity to reflect on where we came from, where we're at today, and where we need to go. An opportunity to reflect on how we, as members of this legislature, are going to fulfill our promise to create just laws for all people. Many of us stand here today, as was mentioned earlier, on the shoulders of giants. Many people who sacrificed their own lives, fought to create just laws many years ago so that all of us here today, this diverse number of legislators in this very room, in this very chamber, could serve the people of California. During these days, I'd like to reflect on some of those heroes, whether it was the great NAACP attorney, Charles Houston, who mentored a young group of leaders to overturn Plessy versus Ferguson, or whether it was Thurgood Marshall or Medgar Evers, who was assassinated in his own driveway, or it was Fannie Lou Hamer, who said she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. But in these kind of days, it's not enough to just reflect in the past. I'm glad that we're also honoring some local heroes who continue to do that work in their own way, in their own profession, in their local communities. And I'm glad we honor some of those great and finest Californians on this floor today. But also, it's a reminder that there's much more work to do. When we see the numbers of our young people, whether they're black or brown, and they're underrepresented in our universities, and they're overrepresented in our prisons, that really matters to all of us. When you see that very few African Americans can get careers in the STEM majors to become engineers and programmers, whether it's in high tech or researchers in biotech, that should matter to all of us, and we should all work to try to address that. When you have a lack of access to health care, even under the reforms that we're making, it reminds us we have much more work to do. And that's why I think it's opportune not only to praise the great and rich history, but also to say, reflect on those challenges that we still have. And it's a reminder we have much more work to do to make sure that we're fulfilling that promise of liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dr. Eggman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise as the chair of the LGBT caucus to also support ACR 118. I think we've all paused to reflect today when we can think about the history books and the work that has been done, but then we think, how has that been translated into our everyday lives today? So it caused me to reflect upon Stockton and to think about the black leaders there who make a difference every single day in our world. Tama Brisbane, poet laureate of the city of Stockton, came here, was honored on this floor for making the city of Stockton an all-American city once more, teaching spoken word to kids at risk every single day to help them find their passion to make their lives better. I think of Dr. Moses Elam, the director of Kaiser, all the doctors there, a leader in healthcare every single day across the state and in our community. I think of young Michael Tubbs, one of the youngest council members in the country, 25 years old now, running for mayor, did an internship in the White House, graduated from Stanford at the age of 24 with a bachelor's and a master's, coming from a single mom on the South Side. His father's been in prison his entire life, defying the odds because of the people who laid their lives down before, so he could do it today. I think of Dougie Martin, arguably one of the best running backs in the NFL, playing for the Buccaneers out of the city of Stockton. And then I think about Nicholas Hatton, young black man who left, went to the Bay Area because he was so bullied growing up in the Central Valley, but had the courage to come back, to be able to do the fight today, every day, as the director of our Pride Center, who provides an open, welcoming space for young kids, mostly young kids of color, so that they then can go on to fulfill their dreams and be able to make all the sacrifices that all the people in our history books have made so that he can stand in those shoes today. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Dr. Weber, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker and members, I too rise in support of ACR 118 and the celebration of Black History Month. Each year I stand here and talk about Black history and the importance of all history and how the inclusion of that history becomes important in the motivation and the stimulation of young people across the nation. And the exclusion has the opposite effect in terms of suppressing young people's dreams and hopes and aspirations. I reflected on that this morning as I was thinking about this celebration of Black History Month. And I realized that this is the 91st celebration of Black History Month. 91 years ago, Carter G. Woodson had the first Black History Week. And I had to think about 91 years of celebration, and it gave me pause and concern. And then I remembered as a freshman about 49 years ago at UCLA, I remembered as I walked on the campus, there was a young man who stood at the top of the hill every Black History Month, and he had a T-shirt on that said, "Why 1 week?" Why 1 week? At that time, there was a Black History Week. He wanted to know why 1 week. And he stood there every day during that week. And eventually somebody says, "Oh, we need a month." That's what he's asking us for. And then eventually he had a shirt that said, "Why 1 month?" And as I began to reflect on Carter G. Woodson in 1925 and his miseducation of the Negro that was written at that time, I began to recognize the fact that while Carter G. Woodson wanted a celebration of a week, that was not the end in itself. That was a means to an end. Because what he was talking about really was the inclusion of African Americans in the history of this country every day. And while he settled and asked for a week, and we settled and asked for a month, after 91 years, we ought to be asking ourselves, why 1 month after 91 years? It ought to be so ingrained in our history books that we have no need for this celebration. That we should not be able to talk about the colonies of this country in 1620 without acknowledging Isabella, who came in 1619 and helped to form the colonies. We should not talk about the Civil War without understanding the sacrifice of Crispus Attucks and understand all of the slaves who gave their service into the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, in order to make this country. We should not even begin to think about the development of this country during the struggle against slavery without talking about those who sacrificed during the Civil War. Sojourner Truth, John Rock, Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, all of those who were advocates at that time. We should never even open our mouths to talk about the wars of this country without celebrating all of those regiments who were honored during World War I, World War II, and talking about Benjamin Davis, General Benjamin Davis. And so what I'm saying is that as we talk here, 91 years of a celebration, as if it's like an event, an activity, that we can bring out the individual people and say, look, we have enough black people who've done this and enough who've done that. We ought to be celebrated. No, what ought to happen, we have had legislation on this floor that talks about diversity in curriculum and the inclusion in curriculum. We ought to be at a point that when I say things and like Hattie McDaniel, everyone should know what we're talking about, because that should have been included in our discussion of the performing arts. We should all be able to basically have the same base of knowledge of information, because that then would change our perspective of ourselves and our colleagues. So what I ask you as we talk about 91 years of raising the issue of African American contributions to the state and this nation and the world, that we ought to be doing something else. We ought to be celebrating the end of Black History Month and the beginning of a history that is inclusive of everyone. That ought to be our cry. We should not think about going to 2025, the 100th anniversary of Black History Month, and still be in the position of calling off the heroes and heroines on this floor, but should be at a point where we're basically celebrating that we truly have found the true story of America, that is no longer his story, but it is our story, that all of us are part of it, and that we don't have our Latino Heritage Month, we don't have our API Month, we don't have all of these weeks and months, because we have finally decided that we are all Americans, that we have all participated in the development of this country, and that all of our stories have equal weight and equal influence in the lives of our children. And so I pray, as I tell you, as we celebrate ACR 118 under McCarty, that we celebrate Black History Month, and that we begin to run toward 2025 with the understanding that we're going to re-educate our teachers. We're going to change the curriculum of our schools. We really are going to embrace the concept of diversity, more than just having wonderful food during the month of all the individuals that we like, more than bringing out a couple of stories and going to a few performances. More than that, we truly are going to transform California, transform this nation, by basically saying we no longer need a Black History Month, because we are a state and a nation that is really unified, because it's no longer one history or his history, but it is truly our history. I ask for your support for 118, ACR 118, and your commitment to move forward to transform the education of this state and this nation.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Mr. Chavez.
Every year since I've been on this floor, since we've celebrated this, I've taken the time to speak on it. I have because from the environment that I came from many decades ago, we recognized the importance of everyone and the diversity of everyone. And we actually celebrate all the time the diversity of our core. But that does not mean that I don't recognize outside the little band of brothers and sisters that I was in that there was something different. As recently as many of you know, I was running around the state, and somebody asked me one time, they said, well, what do you think about the Black Lives Matters issue? And I said, I agree, Black lives do matter. And they said, well, don't all lives matter? And I said, I say that because I recognize that we have too many people of color in prison, too many people of color not being successful within our society, and by saying that, it's a recognition of that. It doesn't mean that all lives don't matter. It's recognizing the fact that we have much work to do, and that's why we're having this here. You know, I see society as it's changing. The Republican Party discussed this. Actually, the founding of the Republican Party in the Lincoln and Douglas debates in Illinois, there was this whole discussion. I reflect kind of any humor on it, the fact that we were watching all these presidential debates with TV commentators and one-line sound bites. In the Lincoln-Douglas debates, the way they were set up, there's 7 of them, one of them would start off with a 60-minute discussion of what they thought about slavery and the state rights. And then the other one would follow up with a 90-minute answer to the discussion earlier. And then finally, the other one had a 30-minute rebuttal. And then they would reverse who went first and second. They did 7 of these. It was in Illinois, which then was the back country. And literally thousands of people would sit there for 3 hours with no commentators, watching 2 men intellectually discuss why it was wrong or right to have slaves. As you know, Lincoln lost that debate and did not become the senator, but because of his intellect, he was asked to go back east, and at the Cooperstown speech, he resonated throughout the Eastern establishment, which drove him to become president. And he said one thing that really struck me strongly that I thought about very much, and I think it speaks to what we're doing here, because I think actually the solution for this division is we as individuals live our life with this standard that Lincoln laid out. We need to be adamant in our principles. Adamant in our principles, strongly in the belief that all men are created equal. Moderate in our actions. And now a lot of Republicans really hate that word moderate, but the reality is when you look at it, it's looking at being thoughtful and respectful and speaking with a measured tone so that people will be able to grasp the intent that you're giving. Your principles are strong. Stay with those. But we don't have to beat each other up with our actions. I'll strongly support this as I have before, as all of us have, and I'm glad we're having this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. Mr. Thurman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, briefly, I just want to associate myself with the distinguished comments of my colleagues and add my sentiment of thanks to those who we will honor today and those who we honor every day. We are all standing on the shoulders of these fantastic unsung heroes and sheroes, and we all owe a debt of gratitude and thanks to them. As I think about the words of my colleague, the gentlewoman from San Diego, that we've been celebrating for some 91 years, I'm struck by some of the comments that I heard from some of our honorees last night. And they said that they had worked so hard on civil rights and human rights, but yet we are still having the same fight about similar issues 91 years later, many years later. I say that to say, let us not just celebrate Black history today. Let us not just talk about history and retell history, but let's honor the legacy of those we celebrate today and those who come before us by making history, by changing history, by changing the present for those that we serve, for African Americans and for all people, on the issues of poverty, on the issues of homelessness, on the issue of health care, getting a quality education, being able to get a good job, and being able to be safe in your community. Let's not just talk about history. Let's honor the legacy of Black History Month by making history and changing history for African Americans and for all people. And please support ACR 118.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. McCarty, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for your attention to this resolution. And to those who spoke, thank you for your thoughtful commentary and reflection on this topic and this month and this celebration. And Madam Speaker, I'd ask for certainly an aye vote on this, but also ask the first roll be open for co-authors.
Thank you very much. The first roll call will be for co-authors on ACR 118. The clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors.